I actually don't read mysteries that often, which I know is crazy because one of my favorite books of all time is Pines by Blake Crouch, which is kind of like a thriller murder mystery kind of book. But for me, I feel like reading a mystery all the time, they can tend to feel very formulaic, and then honestly, they just start to lose a little bit of their impact. With that being said, I do like a little mystery every now and then. So I will not lie, getting this book was a little bit of an impulse buy. Earlier that day, I read the Barnes & Noble newsletter and it was featured on there, and from what I read, it sounded extremely intriguing. So when I went to this really cool Barnes & Noble that was built into an old theater, which the theater/bookstore was actually really cool, I decided to act spur of the moment and pick up The Man Who Died 7 Times. It is actually a little gloomy out here, so I thought it was no better time than to start this mystery book that I got in California. It was actually picked as the monthly pick for Barnes & Noble, which is super sick. This book actually came out in 2021, but the English translation just came out. The beginning of this book has actually been quite good. I've read the first 3 chapters, and majority of it is actually just setting up how all of the different characters are interacting and this odd setup that our main character's grandfather put on. The whole reason he did this was so he could pick a successor to his empire, which he's actually had a very interesting life, and I found all of the different family dynamics that they're describing in these early chapters to be extremely detailed and fascinating and kind of conflicting. The grandfather actually gave the 3 daughters like a terrible life, I would say, for the most part. Later on in his life, he was basically just gambling and doing all the things you shouldn't, until one day he actually hits it big, and now he has this big empire and this restaurant, and they're all now fighting to be the heir, their kids to be the heir of all of this fortune. We follow, as the reader, the youngest son of the eldest daughter named Hisataro, and he actually has this unique condition that is explained, that he basically gets stuck in this Groundhog Day style loop for I think 9 days. And then whatever the 9th day is, that is the new status quo, and his life will just continue after those 9 days. Honestly, it's such a unique setup, and I'm very excited to see how this story unfolds. I am now halfway done, and yeah, the mystery is still going on. That loop that he is stuck in, it keeps leading to his murder, even though it didn't happen in the first one. I was actually doing a little bit of reading before I went to bed, and I just passed chapter 9 just because I wanted to figure out what happened with this last little cliffhanger in this chapter. I just feel like there's a lot of these details that the author points out with each run that just haven't gotten their complete answer yet, and I think that's what the author's looking for, because I have a feeling all of these little details that they have will have a reasoning behind them, and it will all make sense in the end, and I cannot wait for that moment. Specifically the flowers and the earring and the origami paper. This was the final loop, and something was off. I'm on chapter 14 now, almost finished with the book, and that plot twist was insane. Almost done. That's the end. I don't know how I felt about that. I'm gonna try and do my best not to spoil this book, because I feel like mysteries are best read when you go in pretty much blind. The trope of this book is to relive a day over and over again to where you kind of figure out what the mystery is. And this is no new story trope, because this trope dates back to 1915 with The Strange Life of Ivan Ossikin. And in that story, a man basically relives his life but struggles to change his fate. The first thing to come to my mind is often Groundhog Day, the movie. Now, the repeated nature of the time loop allows a more simple character, and not one that is extraordinary like Sherlock Holmes, to be able to pick up on all these minute details of a day. I also really enjoyed how this first chapter kind of gave us a little look into the murder, and it isn't till like a little bit into the book that we see the actual murder, and then it goes into explaining how the trap works for our main character. This book has its fair share of ridiculous moments, with the whole setup being just ridiculous in general, where they go to this New Year's Eve party for their grandfather where where every year he picks the successor of his massive fortune. And they all dress up in these little tracksuits that are all color-coded. And then it just kind of has all these different family dynamics where they're all kind of attacking each other, going into the side of greed a little bit, which I think the whole party setup is a very interesting idea. The book on top of this was very easy to read, and I felt engrossed in the story the entire duration of the book. Except the very end. I felt like it jogged on for one chapter too many, and you can clearly see that they're trying to set up a second book to follow this one, and though everything tied up perfectly in a bow, I don't know how I felt about it. The ending just kind of felt a little far-fetched to me, and I loved how all the details came together, but that final chapter and that final reveal just felt a little bit off to me. I do definitely recommend this book though, and I think the loop aspect is a fantastic way to spice up the typical formula for a murder mystery, because literally there's a murder in every chapter. It is just a fun story, and I honestly just couldn't put the book down till I saw how the story unfolded. I also do have to add that this story does kind of remind me, kind of have the same feeling of like a Knives Out, so if you like those kind of stories, then I definitely recommend this. I have a lot of feelings about the ending of this book, and that has a lot of spoilers. All the details of the origami, the earring, the tracksuits, all were great details that were displayed all throughout the book. I thought the origami had a satisfying conclusion because the reason why he postponed writing his will was because he didn't have any red. It actually was our main character's tracksuit color, which I thought all of that worked very well and were just like certain little details that I was paying attention to the entire time and questioning that just had a satisfying ending. Also, the flowers, the way that they were pinning it all on Emmy was so sick. I was like, why always the flowers? Why did that make sense? But when our main character sat in the room and saw the actual events unfold and the thinking of all the different characters, that was such a clicking moment for me, that just felt so satisfying. Just because other than that, it's just a bizarre detail of the characters leaving, going to get the flowers, and then coming back and then doing the murder. That just seemed off to me, but now it all made sense and it clicked so well. And then the color of the tracksuits are because grandfather is going senile, which makes sense. And I think it's like a cool little detail. And also I just really like the idea of having them all color coded in these different things, and it's all kind of up to gambling, because that really fits in with grandfather's character of him just picking cranes out of a box basically to pick his successors. My main issue with this novel is the ending itself. Once they get back on January 4th and it's revealed that it is actually January 3rd that got stuck on the loop, and then somewhere in there our main character actually died and that's how he lost the day, I felt that was a little bit lazy, and I don't know, it could have been told a little bit differently to make it more impactful, but him explaining it over dinner with Emmy seemed super far-fetched to me, because why did Emmy believe him? I know she explains it saying like, oh, he would never lie and like that kind of a thing, but I don't know, that just seemed a little far-fetched to me and I didn't completely love that. But those are just my small nitpicks. Overall, for probably 95% of the book, I really enjoyed it and was like totally into the story. I just thought that last dinner just felt really far-fetched in my opinion.